welcome to my channel. My name is Sharon, and this is a channel that is dedicated to all things related to narcissism. I make videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on all types of topics related to narcissism, so if you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any videos. I would really appreciate it if you gave the video a thumbs up. It's a free way you can help me out, and definitely don't forget to leave a comment because I like to read what you have to say. In today's video, I want to start by saying this. God has a plan for you. Today, I want to tell you how God saved me from my ex-narcissist. Joe and I have mentioned before that we believe that you're in a spiritual battle when you're dealing with a narcissist. I used to be embarrassed to admit that I believed that you're dealing with God and Satan when you're trapped in a narcissistic relationship or entanglement, as Joe and I usually say. But at this point, I so completely believe it, I'm convinced that I'm just going to say how it is. Evil is profound immorality and wickedness. When you are in the presence of a narcissist, you are in the presence of evil, a being, a thing. Narcissists are evil. They're creatures. Dr. Robert Hare, a renowned psychiatrist, calls them interspecies predators. A predator. When you're dealing with a narcissist, you are not dealing with another person. You are at the point where you need to be saved. There comes a time in the entanglement where it's out of your control. You know, Joe is in a recovery program for drugs and alcohol, and recently he told me that, you know, when you are an alcoholic, at some point there's no such thing as willpower. You don't have the willpower. It doesn't exist for you to stop, because that's what I would have thought, right? If you told me, gee, Sharon, I'm just drinking so much, I feel like I might be an alcoholic. Oh, well, then you should stop drinking, right? Smoking cigarettes, you just can't stop smoking cigarettes. Oh, you should quit. I want to lose weight. Okay, eat less, exercise more. I mean, these things seem so simple outside to outside people. But just like if you're an alcoholic or you were smoking cigarettes or you were desperate to lose some weight, at some point you need help because it's out of your control. That's how it is when you are in an entanglement with a narcissist. At some point, now other people could say to you, well, why don't you just leave? If they're that bad, you should leave. And then you think to yourself, shouldn't I? Oh, and then you get afraid, or you try to when you leave, and you come back and you forgive them, and the narcissist love bombs you, and then you think everything's going to be okay. You hope everything's going to be okay. You need everything to be okay. And it becomes a vicious cycle. The problem really is that you are not dealing with another rational person. You're dealing with a soulless entity, a narcissist. And without God helping you, you will perpetually be stuck. God has to save you. That's my belief. At some point in the entanglement, you need to be saved. In today's video, I'm going to tell you how God saved me. Now, this happened, I began being saved by God in 2016. I actually know the exact date. It was April 21st, 2016. And I'll tell you a little bit about that date as you move forward. I just want to say, though, that prior to God coming into my life, I would have told you that I had a relationship with God, that I believed in God. But the truth, now that I really think about it, I didn't have a relationship with God. I had a kind of, what's the best way to say it? God to me was like a Santa Claus in the sky or a magic genie. He worked for me. Now, I didn't consciously think of it this way, but you know, I didn't grow up with religion. I wasn't somebody who ever went to church. So for me, God was just this figure that I could go to. You know, he was like a man in the sky with a long white beard, and I could go to him if I was scared or in trouble, if I needed something, and his job was to serve me. I never even considered that I was supposed to do something as well, that I am actually his servant. I had it completely messed up. And you know what? When I'm thinking about it, and I think about all the times I came to God, asked him for help, every single time I ever did that, he came to my aid, and I never considered doing anything for him. Well, I'm happy to tell you that things are very, very different now. Now, I don't start any prayer without thanking God, because I am so grateful to have been saved from my narcissist. And I want you to know, not believe, but to know you can be saved too. You need to work with God. That is what I believe the answer is. And I'm going to tell you, in my story, I didn't even know God had come into my life initially. I didn't know this until months after he showed up in my life, that he was helping me. And I didn't even ask God. This is the thing. I didn't ask him to come save me. He just showed up. He rescued me. If you want God to rescue you, ask him. I didn't ask him and he came. So that doesn't mean he won't come. But if you ask God to help you, he will come. But it's crucial to understand how God works. One of the things, and I'll tell you along the way in this video, some things that I realized, God is very quiet. He's like the politest person you could ever imagine. He's not going to yell. He's not going to force you to do anything. He's going to whisper. He's going to be very quiet. You need to listen to him. You need to train yourself to hear him talking to you. And God's not going to audibly speak to you, I doubt. But what you do need to do is learn to hear him, to understand when he's talking to you. Because I can tell you this, God is very quiet. Evil is very loud. It's obnoxious. It's in your face. It's screaming in your ear. You always hear evil. You always hear the wrong thing. But God is not like that. So pay attention. I followed God without even realizing I was doing it. Now I'm very conscious of it. So what I would advise to you is, if you are in an entanglement, if you're with a narcissist right now, consider that God might be working in your life right this minute, and think about some things that are happening. Because when God comes into your life, it isn't all unicorns and roses and flowers. Like when God first came into my life, really bad things happen. And that's how it is sometimes. God is not pain averse. If you have to feel pain to get to a point where you're supposed to be, that's how it is. And it isn't because God is mean, but he truly has your best interest at heart. Like let's just say you were on a diet. Say you were dangerously overweight and, you really need to lose weight, but while you were trying to go to your whatever 1,500 calorie a day diet, you were hungry and it hurt and you were starving and grumpy. The best thing is still for you to go through that, for you to be hungry, for you to deal with it, because it's for your good. So it's kind of like that with things that God allows you to go through, which of course, let's just be fair, God has warned us all that we shouldn't have been with a narcissist at some point. Can anybody truthfully tell me that they were with a narcissist, are with a narcissist, and when you go back and think about it, that there was no way you could have known? There were so many red flags with my ex, and I always had an excuse for them, but they were there, and that's God telling you, you're seeing these things. But remember, he's quiet, so it's kind of like, it's like pointing over at something. If we don't pay attention, we're going to get ourselves in trouble. And it's the same thing when you get out. Pay attention. And it's a process. It's a process to learn to listen to God. What I have done lately, what I do in the last couple of months, and this has been tremendous for me. Joe and I have 3 dogs. 2 of them, the 2 girls, I take for a walk most days. So I take them for a walk around the neighborhood. It usually takes about a half hour, 40 minutes or so. And that's my quiet time with God. Now, we talk to God at other times as well. Joe and I regularly pray together, things like that. But this is my time where I do different things. Sometimes I'll pray while I'm walking. Sometimes I'll ask God to talk to me, and I'll just quietly walk and see kind of what comes to mind. Other times I listen to motivational videos, something inspiring, or Bible stories, whatever it is, and I'm listening to God to speak to me through that. Very often I get a message from God. I feel like he spoke to me, like I heard what he wanted me to hear. But it was a process. I didn't do that until even recently. And that's the thing with your relationship with God. It grows and grows, and it continues to improve. So the way that I am right now, hopefully a year from now, I'll be thinking back and thinking, wow, look at all I've accomplished so far. Not in a vain way, but just that you keep moving forward. Your relationship with God should be ever evolving. Now, when God first came into my life, I didn't have a relationship at all with him. It was very superficial. Remember, he was really working for me. Now, there are two main events that happened in April 2016. Now, keep in mind, when this happened, I didn't know what narcissism was. I didn't know what codependence was. I had no clue. The first event that happened when God first came into my life noticeably, I knew it was him, but I didn't know what to make of it. So my ex had been laid off from his job for about 6 months. Now, he had gotten a good severance package, so he was getting a paycheck still, but it was about to run out. We were very, very close. I can't remember how close it was, but we were very close to him running out of money. And I was very upset about this. I was a stay-at-home mom at this time. He was the breadwinner. So for him not to get paid, that was terrifying to me. So one day I decided, I'm just gonna go in my basement. I'm gonna clean my basement. I was trying to just get away, not think about it, just focus on something else. While I was down the basement, suddenly, now I didn't hear this audibly, but it went in my head, be still and know that I am God. Now, when this happened, now I know you probably are like, oh, that's so common. You see that all the time. I do too. Joe and I have some things in our house, some signs, a blanket even that says that. But at the time, I didn't read the Bible. I didn't know it. I don't remember ever hearing it before. And it wasn't audible. It wasn't like I was hearing voices, but it was in my mind. And it was so profound. And it happened so suddenly. I knew it was from God. I knew God had spoken to me. I was in such awe that I actually started going upstairs to tell my ex about this. While I was going upstairs, he was coming downstairs and he ran into me and he said, I got a job. I just got a job. He had been rehired from the place that laid him off. While I was in my basement hearing God tell me, be still and know that I am God, he had gotten a phone call that he had gotten a job. I knew, and that has comforted me so many times since then, that God is there. He knows. And I had no relationship with him. So if you have a relationship with him, if you're open to these things, listen, is there anything happening that could be God? Because when he came into my life again a few days later, I had no idea, but this was so pivotal in my life, it changed everything. So he gave me this little clue, right? Not that it's a red flag, but kind of like I was talking about the narcissist with the red flags, hello, here I am. A few days later, maybe it was a week, it was April 21st, 2016. I was in my bathroom. It was just like any other day. I was codependent. I was married to a narcissist. I had no idea that I was either of those things. I knew I didn't have a great marriage, and I couldn't understand the things that my ex did, but that was the extent of it. So I was in my bathroom getting ready, putting on makeup, and I'm listening to the radio, and suddenly the radio announcer said, the musician Prince died. As soon as he said that, I could feel something change inside of me. It was physical. It isn't quite like this, but the best way that I can describe it is, if I know a lot of you know what the narcissistic stare is. The narcissistic stare is a look that narcissists get sometimes. And when they're looking this way, there's something so wrong, you can feel it. It's chilling. Your physical body reacts to this look that the narcissist has. When this happened, when the announcer said that Prince died, it wasn't like a dread feeling or anything, but something inside me changed instantaneously. What it was my codependence was lifted. I wasn't codependent anymore. I didn't know what that was, but I wasn't. From that moment, from that day, something changed in the way that I looked at my ex. He repulsed me. I loathed him. There was nothing towards him. The thought of even saying anything nice to him couldn't happen. Now, I wasn't mean to him or anything, but I didn't give him narcissistic supply at all from that day forward. Something changed within me right then. Now, this is for another video, but that went horribly for my ex. He took such a downward spiral. It taught me, and I'm going to tell you this, narcissistic supply is absolutely crucial. And if you are in an entanglement with a narcissist and you know that you are the main narcissistic supply, that makes you very, very powerful. So I know you're with a narcissist, you feel weak and you feel like you have nothing in your life, no control. You have all the control. When you're in these entanglements, What you see isn't the way that it is. What you feel, it isn't always the way that it is. I'm telling you, you have power. Now, the other thing that happened with that being said was immediately I started thinking about an ex-boyfriend of mine. Now, I like Prince, but I wouldn't say like I'm a huge fan. I wasn't like ripped up over his death, so I'm not saying that. However, immediately I thought to myself, I wonder if so-and-so knows. I just want to tell you a little bit about this ex-boyfriend of mine. He was a non-factor in my life. I didn't love him. I didn't miss him. I didn't think about him ever, never. Yet, crucially, if you had asked me about this relationship, I would have told you that our relationship ended 100% because of him. I had nothing to do with it. In fact, I was a victim of him. From that day, April 21st, 2016 to the end of August 2016, so we had 4 months, that relationship was front and center on my mind. I went over it and over it and over it. I mourned that relationship in a way. I went through it. And I came to the very unpleasant realization that not only was it my fault that everything ended, it was 100% my fault. He was a victim of me. I hurt him, and I felt that pain. I felt it one day. I know it was me feeling that pain. I had to go through this because I had to ask God to absolve me. I needed to ask his forgiveness. Now, I never did contact this person. I felt, there were a few times I thought maybe I should, but I really felt, and I had asked God this, if I should, and I was waiting to hear from him. I don't believe that I need to. If things change, if I ever decide, maybe I should say something to him, I will. I'll look him up. I have never, to this day, looked him up. I don't know where he lives. I've never seen his social media. I have no idea what he does today. But I do know that I hurt him. I needed to take responsibility for that with God, and I did. That I know now. Remember, at this time, when all this was happening, I was so confused. Why is this happening? Why? Why am I obsessing over this? And I'll tell you something else that happened. One of the strangest things that ever happened to me in my life happened during this 4-month time period. I lived in California with this ex. Like I said, I don't know where he lives now. Last I knew, he didn't live in California. So maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But I felt all of a sudden, one day, an overwhelming desire to go home. Like to go home to him in California. Now, I knew rationally, like I wasn't outside of my mind. I knew that was impossible. It couldn't happen. He wasn't there anyways. But it felt like to me. So I was standing in New Hampshire. I have 2 kids. I'm married, right? And I'm thinking to myself, I need to go home to him. I need to go home. It was almost like everything that happened between our breakup and where I was now was some terrible nightmare that I need to get home. What happened? Oh my gosh. Like it was panic. It was bad. I actually had to go and calm myself down because I thought I was going to lose it in front of my kids because I literally wanted to get in the car and drive to the airport. It was that severe. So this is when I tell you, it was like 4 torturous months. I went through it. I needed to do that. When God is in your life, and see, I did it. I followed him. Although I have to tell you, God has made my life so much easier because he really didn't give me a choice. If I had had the choice, I would not have gone through this like this. It was much easier for me when it was all his fault and I'm an innocent victim. But that wasn't how it is. And like I said at the beginning, God has a plan for all of us. Part of the plan is I had to be cleansed. I need to be in a good place. Like imagine if you're running a marathon. I couldn't just go out and start running 26.2 miles easily. I'd have to train a little bit each day. I'd have to get in the right shape. Everything would have to be right so I could accomplish my goal. So it's kind of like that with God. Everything needs to be in good working order so you can accomplish your goals, so that God can do for you what he has planned for you. But we also have to follow along. We're part of it. It's not just like I told you how my relationship with God used to be, where he gives things to me, I take them, and that's how the relationship is. You need to participate. God's plan needs to be your plan. So I started following God. I did what he said. Now, in that case, I did it because he made it easy for me. He forced me to do it. But the next thing didn't have to be that way. in the fall of 2016, I began to feel that I should go to church with the kids. Now, to go to church with the kids was a very uncomfortable thing for me because my ex wasn't going to go. It was just me and the kids, and we were basically living separate from him at that point anyways. And my ex always used to tell me that people didn't like me. I had something wrong with me. People were looking at me. Today, now, as I'm telling you this, I know it's because he didn't want me to have a life outside of him. But I didn't know it at the time, and I made decisions based on that, and I lived my life based on that. So for me to go to church with the kids and meet people, introduce ourselves, like people would be watching me, focusing on me. What if they're looking at me? What if they think something wrong with me? What if this affects the kids? I mean, there's all these things I'm thinking. But I felt such a desire, like I had to go. I went. My kids and I started going what I call church shopping, and we ended up finding an amazing church because I went through what I had to go through with my ex. Because I went to the church, so many things changed. Of just following today, I can see this, but I didn't know what was happening. It wasn't until later I started piecing this all together. So I started going to church, and we went to the most wonderful church. We were supposed to go there. I know this now. Even moving to New Hampshire, I had tried to get my ex out of Massachusetts for a long time. He was so resistant to looking for another job. And like I told you, he ended up getting laid off the year after we moved to New Hampshire. He was so resistant. That's why we lived in New Hampshire. It was the best I could do with him. It was the furthest I could get. I actually wanted to go to California, and that had nothing to do with my ex. I just liked living in California. But we ended up, instead of California, we ended up in New Hampshire, right? So we went a little distance. But I think now we were supposed to be there also. All of this is God working in my life, and I'm following him. So we're at this church, and my kids made such wonderful friends there. We met such good people. Now, also at that church, I started making my first friends since I moved to New Hampshire. And one of the people that really, really helped me was my pastor. Now, so this would have been about 2 years later. So we've been going to this church for a while, making friends. Our life was improving. My ex, he was spiraling out of control. And that's, like I said, another video. But, I had the police coming over. I had, he went to a mental hospital. He came to the house with a loaded gun. I mean, it was just, he went crazy without the narcissistic supply. That is another video. If you want to hear that, let me know. Just for today's video, I'm just going to tell you, he wasn't doing well. The kids and I, granted, we're living with this person, but our life was a separate life. And without him there, it was actually pretty good. But my ex at one point, now I still didn't know about narcissism. I found this out around 2018. He told me that he was an alcoholic. Now, I didn't know this because he was living in the basement. So he was drinking at night down there. He was drinking, there were several times he would mow the lawn, and all of a sudden he was gone. And it was kind of like, I'd say to the kids, where's daddy? Where's daddy? Nobody knows where daddy is. He told me later he was in the woods drinking. So he's this alcoholic. He told me, he just confessed it to me one day. Literally, I was in my room, and he sent me a text that said, I'm an alcoholic. So that's how that started. I confided this to my pastor. I knew him well enough, because for me to talk to people about this, that wasn't something I did. But I confided in him. And he shocked me when he told me I should leave him. You should leave him. You don't deserve that. The church will support you. To have my pastor tell me I should leave my husband was such a shocking thing. I did not think that there was any chance at all that he was going to say that. I expected when I spoke with him that he was going to tell me, well, you married him. It's too bad. You made a commitment to God, so it's your lot in life. I really thought that. It couldn't have been further from the truth. As time marched on, I got stronger. I built up a network of people. God kept doing for me what I couldn't do at the time, but I followed. I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I was thinking to myself, and I wasn't even actively talking to God so much here. I was a little bit. Now I actively ask God questions. I talk to him. But as time went on, I kind of just learned to trust my gut. And as we went forward, I ended up several times calling the police, like I mentioned, to get my ex out of the house. I never would have done that in the past. I was strong enough. I was bold enough to do that. I still felt trapped, though. I felt trapped. I didn't want to be in this marriage anymore. I didn't know what to do. I didn't think I could make it on my own. And Hi, everybody. Sorry to insert myself back in here. And I ended that other video rather abruptly. I had to cut off the end, and I just want to redo the ending so that it kind of flows together. The last thing that I want to talk about in today's video is listening to God and finding my Joe. Now, some of you may know that I met Joe through the channel. Well, you might not know that the reason I do this channel, the reason I began this channel was because I felt a prompting from God. I just felt like he wanted me to get this information out there. Now, at the time, it's like so weird for me to think about this now because it was just a little over 2 years ago. I had no idea how massive of a problem that narcissism was. I had no idea that we are not in the minority, even in the slightest. There were so many times I would feel absolutely alone. Like I am dealing with this. This is impossible that anyone else could understand this, would know what this is, how to handle it, what to do. I had no idea. So I thought of all that time that was wasted, where I was confused. I was trying to be a better wife to somebody that was backstabbing me. So that was something that was very, very important for me to get across to other people, that there is this thing, and if you're dealing with it, this is a real problem. This is not going to go away. So I did that, and I started interacting with people from the comments. Well, Joe was one of those people. And I just kept listening. I kept listening to God. Joe asked me at one point, well, we were going back and forth with the comments, and then he asked me if he could call me. And that phone call, you guys, that was March 26th, 2021. That changed everything for both of us forever. I mean, that was, I can't even tell you how important that call was. It changed the course of our lives. But I had listened to God. So I had listened to him. I did the YouTube channel. I did the follow through. I started to meet people. All that had moved me in position to meet Joe. I mean, the odds of that. Here we are in two different states where, dealing with these horrific issues with our personal lives. And then we're going to start a relationship together. But it's worked fantastic. We're raising our kids together, everything. All because I listened to God. And all this goes all the way back, way at the beginning when I was talking about 2016. It started that day. I didn't even know, but I just kept listening to the gut, the gut instinct that I had. And eventually I recognized that it was God. If I can do this, you can do this too. That's what it took. It just took learning to hear God, learning what his voice sounds like. That makes all the difference in the world. And if you feel like God isn't with you, are you sure? Is there something he could be doing in your life right now that you're not even seeing? I would bet you that God is very, very close to you. In fact, I know that he is. All of us can be okay. But when you're dealing with spiritual warfare, it's a spiritual battle, and make sure you get God involved. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this came out later than usual. I needed to work with my support team, which is the teens in the house, to get this going. Thank you very much. I appreciate you listening, and I will see you on Friday. God bless.